Hello, I'm Jim Cornwall, and this is the WalkingPost.com podcast. WalkingPost.com is the news website dedicated to walking, with all the latest on books, festivals, gear, health, trails, fitness, events, and more. This podcast is number 42, going out on February the 27th, another month almost over. Allegedly, tomorrow there is an alignment of planets that will be visible in some places. I say allegedly, not because it won't happen, but I do live in Scotland, and we don't really do sky. The irony is that I live near the Galloway International Dark Sky Park, and it's named because there's very little light interference from nearby communities. I am joking because we do actually get some decent nights, and it is definitely astonishing when you're originally a city boy, being able to see the night sky very clearly. So, what is February the 27th? Well, it's Pokemon Day, it's Retro Day, which when you're older means Reminiscing Day, I guess, and it's also Polar Bear Day. Let's hope that they aren't soon a thing of the past, like many of the other species that we've sent into extinction. It's also Chili Day, and that's chili the food, not the country, or the sensation of being cold, which chili might help with. It's Stand Up to Bullying Day, and it's also No Brainer Day. I think there should be a No Brain Day too, when you can legitimately tell someone off for doing something boneheaded. It's the day in the year 425 when the University of Constantinople was founded, and ironically, today was the day that somebody managed to pay off their student loan from that time. It's the 126th birthday of Bayern Munich, and it's also the birthday of poet Longfellow. Let's move on. Last time we chatted with long-distance barefoot walker and ultra-marathon runner Ken Posner. This week, our conversation is about walking, obviously, but it's also inspirational because we are talking with Tiffany Jones, who wrote a book called Couch to Kilimanjaro, about her experience walking up a mountain. My next book should probably be called Couch to Fridge. Before we get going, if you do have any news, guest ideas, or even subjects to cover, or comments or suggestions, please do get in touch via walkingpost.com, or you can just email me at jim@walkingpost.com, and that's the same email address if you would like to advertise with us. Okay, let's go through some of the headlines of the news articles you may have missed that we had on walkingpost.com this past week. Bristol Walkfest organisers are looking for walk leaders. Haglöfs is launching a new line of lightweight footwear. The UK's first of 9 national river walks is going to be the Mersey Valley Way. And a community in Arizona has launched a pass to inspire wildlife watching and exploring the local trails. The Beeston Bee Trail has expanded, creating quite a buzz. Sorry about that one. All Trails has partnered with Western National Parks, and a report says that a weekly brisk long walk reduces the risk of sarcopenic obesity. And you can read all of these and more at walkingpost.com. So it's time for this week's conversation, and this week's guest is Tiffany Jones. And I don't want to give away too much about the rest of her story and her trip to Kilimanjaro, other than to say it's compelling and it's inspiring. As I was the editor of a newspaper that included a part of Maine years ago, and Tiffany is from Maine originally, we had a good chat about the state before we even got to the interview, about stores in Maine, music, baseball, and everything in between, not all of which is included in the interview. So let's just get to it. Hi Tiffany, really appreciate you joining us on the podcast this week, and maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about the first part of your story as to why you took on the Kilimanjaro walk.
So my story really begins with, it was 2022, and I lost my mom to cancer, and I had lost my dad to cancer about 4 years before that. And so much of my adult life was like caring for my parents and watching them go through the journey of cancer. And I think we're all affected by cancer in some way. It's touched us all. And I know when I share that, everyone hopefully has their soft spot in their hearts for how hard it is, the mental challenge of cancer, the physical toll it takes on people that you love watching go through this, and then takes them away from, in my case, right, took them away. And I was so devastated. My mom was my best friend. And, I have two kids and, a husband, and we would live close together with my mom, and she would just be with us all the time. And losing her was like losing a limb. And I didn't know how to really get through that darkness, that deep sadness, that loss, that hole. But I knew that I have two kids and I couldn't stay in bed forever. So I had to do something. And I had been connected with a man his name is Sean Swarner. And he takes people to climb Kilimanjaro who have been affected by cancer. And he himself survived 2 childhood cancers. And he goes every year to climb Kilimanjaro with these people that have been affected by cancer. I had met him 2 years before my mom passed away, and he and I had been working together online, and I'd been helping him, with his trips and helping him with his websites and emails and customer relations management things, his CRMs. And so he had planted the seed when I first started working with him, and he had said, Tiffany, you're going to come to Africa with me someday. Someday you'll come climb Kilimanjaro. And I am not a typical mountain climber. I am a walker. I'm a mama too, and I, am happy to be that. And I, would say, okay, yeah, someday, Sean. Someday I'll do that. We all have those. Someday I'll do that. Someday when I lose 100 pounds, or when I win the lottery and have $1 million, or someday I'll do that. And that's what I would say when he would bring it up. But when I was in this darkness, knowing that I needed to do something, I was also in a business group, and the business group had put out the challenge, a 90-day challenge. What would you do if you could do anything in 90 days? Put aside any cost, put aside any physical limitations, put aside anything. Just put aside all those what ifs and imagine what would you do in 90 days if you could do anything. Well, I'm a competitive person. And I had just had this huge loss, and I had the seed planted from Sean. And I said, you know what? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro, the tallest mountain in Africa. And I brought that to the business group. And of course, everyone was like, oh, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to be on a podcast. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to, run a marathon. I'm going to run a 5K, these other things. And then I said, I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro. So I really took that there to win, which I feel like in my heart I did win that one. That's where it began. It was February of 2022. I had no idea how to do this. But I had done a couple years before that a Couch to 5K, which is this app where you really start off small. You walk for 5 minutes, and then you run for 30 seconds. And then you walk for another 5 minutes, and then run for another 30 seconds. And that whole concept and that whole activity, really, I ran a 5K, I will put in quotes, but I did it. I did that. And that process had been so positive for me that I thought, I'm going to go back to that. And how do I start? How do I even begin to climb the tallest mountain in Africa when I didn't even have a job at the time, Jim. I was I had no idea where I was going to start, but I thought I can go buy a pair of sneakers. I can do that. I can go to, it was Dick's Sporting Goods. I can go there. I can go to the wall of sneakers. There's a pair there that's on sale for $30. And that's what I did. It was a pair of Adidas that I bought for $30 from Dick's Sporting Goods. And boom, that was the beginning. And honestly, I hope everyone goes out and buys a pair of sneakers because, if you have had a new pair of sneakers or even new to you pair of sneakers, you put that on and it's all of a sudden you step different. All of a sudden you have this momentum that maybe you didn't have before. It's just it's a little thing, but it really truly was. That was how I began.
Were you a walker before? Like, did you go for hikes or?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I like to walk. I love to walk. I mean, that is good. And I lived in Maine, and there's beautiful trails, right, all along the coast. And absolutely, I mean, in Maine, it's probably freezing 3/4 of the year. But so we would bundle up. My husband worked for LL Bean, and we'd have good gear. We'd say there's no bad weather, only bad gear. And we'd bundle the kids up, and we'd backpack, and we'd walk the dogs. And I always have found my peace in nature and being outside.
What was the trip to Africa like? How did you cope with that?
So in February, I bought the sneakers, and then I joined a gym, and it was just like these like little pieces that started to fall into place, but I didn't have a job. And it was going to cost $10,000. And I had no idea how I was going to get that money, but I could start a GoFundMe, and that doesn't cost anything. And I could tell my story. People connect and they want to support you. And I think that's how we all get to where we want to go. But I put it out there on GoFundMe. I said, I am climbing Kilimanjaro to kick cancer's butt. And that was my tagline. A couple friends reached out to me and said, wow, I'm really affected by cancer. I really want you to do this. This is amazing. And they, money started coming into my GoFundMe. And I woke up one morning in March to my GoFundMe being funded by Grape Nuts, that cereal by Post. I woke up and the Grape Nuts had turned 125 years in 2022, and they had chosen 9 women to go fund their adventures from GoFundMe. And I was one of those people that they funded there. At first, I thought it was like a scam. I thought like somebody was trying to get into my bank account backwards. Like I was very hesitant. But it turned out that it was all legit. It was all true. And Grape Nuts gave me $12,000 to go to do this. And so all of a sudden, that barrier was removed. And it was like a whole new level of like a freak out moment, right? Happened because, it's an idea, but like you sometimes use these excuses, right? I'll say, oh, it's too cold out, or, oh, I have too much weight to lose, or I have not enough money, or all these excuses I can say to stop me from doing someday. They were taken away and I had to go. And I was like, oh my gosh, now I have to go. That was March. I kicked up my walking really serious then. I bought hiking boots and I got the poles. I got my poles and I got my hiking boots and I got a good backpack, and I really invested in like what I was going to need to climb this mountain. And April Fool's Day came and I got diagnosed with breast cancer. My mom had the BRCA2 gene. She had done genetic testing, and then I did genetic testing and found out that I too had the BRCA2 gene. So I was being watched, but it was just indescribable, honestly, to wake up and find that I have breast cancer. And I had just been funded by Grape Nuts. That money had gone, that excuse had gone away. And it gave me, honestly, more fuel to my fire. I was mad. I was really mad, and I had already been frustrated and mad at cancer, but now it was like, it was getting personal. Like now it was coming at me. I was like, it was almost ironic. Here I was really focused on like climbing Kilimanjaro to kick cancer's butt, and to get cancer, that was just another level of like, no, not today. So I worked with my doctors and I went in and I told them, I said, I know I have breast cancer. I understand what that treatment looks like. I understand what all that looks like. But I have just been funded by Grape Nuts and I have to go climb this mountain. And they thought I was out of my mind, but they saw it and they knew. Like they were like, okay. So the first week in June, I had my first surgery, my first lumpectomy, where they took the large mass out. And then the last week in June, I flew out to Africa. And, along that way from April to June, I have to say, I was bringing people with me on my journey, because for me, it really was all about that journey. Whether I got to the mountain or not was kind of like the side point. But what I really focused on every day was just that little next step I could take to get me further, to get me where I wanted to go. And so I shared that as much as I could. I shared my journey, with Grape Nuts. I was on the news, I was in the newspaper, I was on the radio, I had some media coverage, right, where that would help me, and I shared it on social media because I had read a book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And in that book, it's about a seagull. It's a very quick read. It's by Richard Bach, and it's just a great mindset book for me. And it's about this seagull who loves to fly. And all the other birds around him are really focused on getting to the food, right? They don't even think about flying. We don't even think about walking all the time, right? They were focused on like, I got to get here. And then they would get there, right? They would fly there and they get there and they get there to the destination. But for Jonathan Livingston Seagull, it was about enjoying the journey. It was about enjoying that flight. It was about figuring out how fun it was to fly and like find the current and get your speed or do some tricks along the way. And for me, the journey of getting to Africa and getting to the mountain was really where my peace came. It was really where my strength came. It was really where my joy came from, was that journey. And it was so I would go on walks and I would go to new trails. I would like explore new places that I hadn't gone. I had fun. I would bring my family along, right? And go through these trails. And going from April to June was such a gift, and I think many times when I tell my story, people again are like focused on that mountain. It's a big mountain, like, wow, you climbed Kilimanjaro, like, oh my gosh. But for me, truly, it was more the journey that really gave me my pride. That's what I feel most proud of, is that those steps, those little small hikes that really got me to Africa, to this big mountain. And that's not to undercut. The mountain is huge. So it's 19,341 feet. And before that, the tallest mountain I had climbed was Mount Washington. And Mount Washington is like 6,000 feet in New Hampshire. So that was the tallest I'd gone, was 6,000 feet. And this was about triple that. It's enormous. The trail that we took was the Mashame route, and that is 6 days. You kind of go up in elevation, and then you have to go down to acclimatize, and then you go up and you go down. And one of the first words in Swahili that I learned was, you start off in the rainforest. It goes through like 7 biomes, as you go. You start off in the rainforest and you end up in the snow-capped at the top. The first words in Swahili I learned were pole pole. And the guides would say that to us as we would walk, and that means slowly, slowly. Because they knew the only way to get up this mountain is pole pole. Slowly, slowly. And honestly, that was sometimes harder than going fast, to consciously slow yourself down, to really, again, become present in the moment, be where you are. But that is the only way to really, truly get to your destination, because you need every ounce of adrenaline and strength. So on day 3, I got to 15,000 feet. So I was higher than I'd ever been. We were above the clouds. It's amazing. There's a place called the Lava Tower, and I cried. I cried. I couldn't believe I had gotten to 15,000 feet on Mount Kilimanjaro. This was June, and I'd started in February. And then day 4, we go through this place. There were like these 2 places that I had been watching videos, and you study and you visualize yourself doing this. So these 2 places that I really was looking forward to getting to, one was the Lava Tower, and the next was a place called the Barranco Wall, or the Kissing Rock. And that is like this sheer rock that has like a thin walk along it. It's like Kissing Rock because you're like up against the rock. That's at about 16,000 feet. It was hard. It was, you're using your hands, you're using your legs, and it's scary, but I did it. I did it. I did the Barranco wall. I got through the other side and I felt elated. I mean, I was so grateful. I was so excited. It was such a powerful experience. We're headed up to a resting spot, and the ground is like Mars. It's dust, it's fine silt and rocks, it's no vegetation. You're up too high, and there's no oxygen. And the next thing I know, I'm sliding. I'm sliding on my back down the mountain like a turtle on its shell. And I have no idea how that happened. I just know that I hit my head, a rock, big boulder stopped my head. It's the only way. I was like trying to figure out how to stop while you're sliding down. I don't know if anyone's been skiing, but sometimes when you fall when you're skiing, you're like, I can't stop myself. And that's kind of how it was as I'm falling down this mountain. And a rock stopped my head and I could see the summit. I could see the summit. It was right there. It was still 2 days away, but it was so close. But I saw the summit and I wondered why I needed to get there. And I realized also that I was probably in more danger than I thought. Like, this is the reality hit me pretty clearly. This is no like ha, like have fun out on a picnic. I didn't want to die, you know? I did not come all this way, all this time to die on this mountain. And people were getting taken off, you know? There was no oxygen. It turns out I was hypoxic, so I wasn't getting oxygen to my brain. I was dehydrated, I was hypothermic. All together, it was a bad combination, and my body was just done. It would not go. They carried me to my tent, actually. I had like a black and blue on my arm from where the guides, you know, who were amazing, but the guides carried me to my tent. I was so emotional. But when I saw that summit, I realized that a lot of me needing to get there was pride and ego. And it wasn't really for me. It was really how I would look to other people. It was really about other people. It really wasn't my climb almost. And I didn't need to do that. I knew who I was, and I knew that I had come so far and I had done so much, and 4 days on Kilimanjaro is a lot of days. It was 16,000 feet up, and I had to choose to turn around and not make the summit, Jim. And that was really hard, a really hard thing to come to terms with. I think there's a lot of moments in our lives probably people have had, and this is a big one for me, was that I had to realize that what I thought was my summit, it wasn't going to happen. My reality was my body said, quit. My body quit. It wasn't going to take me. I had to come to terms with that fact. And again, I went through this like sadness, and I felt like I left people down. I felt embarrassed because I didn't finish, and you know, what were people going to think of me, and was I enough, and all these things. And I was feeling all of this as I was heading down the trail, and my mom's voice came to me. You know, so this was June, and it was 6 months after she passed away. And I hadn't listened to a message from her. I hadn't heard her voice, and she passed away. But it was powerful, and hearing her voice, and she said to me, she said, Tiffany, sometimes it's stronger to be gentle than to fight. And that was the first time I really heard that message. And that was for me a lesson that I have taken with me since that day, that my automatic go-to is I'm a bull in a china shop, and I'm going to bust through, and I'm going to do. I'm a doer. I'm a go getter. And, you know, it was just really clear. She was like, it's sometimes stronger to be gentle than to fight. Let go, and you can be free. And that's what that was. And I had to let go. I had to be gentle on myself, you know, instead of fighting with myself. And that is where our strength comes from, is when we can be gentle with ourselves, when we can be gentle with others. So much in our world, right? We fight so much. And the real strength is the people that can be gentle. So that was big for me and powerful. And I came down. The rest of my team had 2 more days on the mountain. And I came down to the village. I have been a teacher for all of my life. Even as a little kid, I was playing school in my bedroom and grading papers. I'm a teacher, and I had been teaching, and I had brought over, my daughter had collected a bunch of school supplies that I brought over to Africa with me to give to the kids, to give to the schools there, because they don't have supplies. They don't have CVS, they don't have a Martin's, they don't have a Dollar Tree, like they don't have a way to get like pencils and paper, like simple things we all take for granted every day. And so I had brought these supplies over. And so the people in the village knew that I was interested in the schools. And they brought me to a building and they said, Tiffany, we want to show you this building. We just bought it and we want to make it a school. And I have a video of this building that's broken. It's a broken building. It's got like tiles are broken, no windows, it's dirt yard. But I saw what they saw, and it was so clear. It was a beautiful space that was going to be restored, and we could build a school. And I had 2 days, but in that 2 days, they showed me this building, and all of it came to me so clearly. I needed to start a nonprofit to bring people over to Africa. I never thought I was going to get to go to Africa. That was not a thing I thought I was going to get to do. How do people get to do this? I didn't know. But we're going to build a school and bring people over to Africa and come do service and safari. The idea just like really honestly came to me in those 2 days. I had pads full of paper, written out notes, like I planned it out. I was like, this is going to happen. I am going to start a nonprofit that is going to help build this school, and we're going to build this school. That only happened because I fell. So that is what I did. That is what I did. And I went home and I was faced with a year full of chemotherapy and radiation and a lot of surgeries. And I lost my hair and I was very sick. And I had a really, that cancer journey that people have. I had that next year, but I also had something else that was building this nonprofit that just took me out of myself. It took me out of my present pain or whatever, and it just gave me a purpose. My nonprofit's called Patchworks because my maiden name was Patch. And so I named it after my family in honor of my mom and dad. And Patchworks brings people and supplies over to support schools and teachers in Tanzania. And none of that would have happened if I had made it to the top of the mountain.
Do you still do this for other schools?
That is a great question. I have just moved to States. And so all of my licensing and all of my business, like my 501c3 status, it was connected to Maine. And so we just moved to Florida. And I have to tell you that I think it's going to transition into a different business model. Having a nonprofit was very costly for me, and I don't have resources. I'm not a self-made millionaire. So I'm still kind of paying off that cost, really. I'm paying off the cost of what the last 3.5, 4 years have been. We did every year we would bring people and supplies over to build the school, and the school is beautiful and is growing. It has 2 stories. And I pray every day that there's a way for me to continue to be of service and bring people that maybe never thought they could come to Africa to come to Africa, whether you want to climb Kilimanjaro or whether you want to just walk up to the waterfall or, walk around town. Like, it's an amazing trip. We have an amazing trip where people can really come have this experience for themselves. And my daughter Lily, who's now 13, she was 10 when on her first trip to Africa. She and I are very connected to the community there. They're our family. And so I don't know what it's going to look like. I had to let go of my 501c3 status. I'm in a discovery moment. I don't know. The someday piece I do want to go back to was like, I realized more and more every day as I get older, Jim, like we can't say someday forever. This is our day, right? And so this is my day. These are my moments. This is my time, because sometimes sharing my story, I get a little stressed out about it, or I'll get anxious, or, I get into my head about it. But I know that it's meant for other people to hear, to hopefully have them continue their walking, continue their journey, and know that you never know where that next step is going to take you. You just have to take that first step.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, hopefully your cancer is gone now.
So yeah, it's a journey. Cancer is a journey. It's gone, and I'm continuing treatments, little stuff, but my hair is back.
What are your plans now that you're in Florida? And
Again, I'm open. I have no idea. I'm like, my plans are, the world is open. I have a lot of ideas. So what I did when I came home was I wrote my first little book, because I knew my story had to get out. And I had started writing a long book, but I just wrote, this is a little book. It's like $7 on Amazon, and it's 40 pages. I call it a coffee book because it costs as much as a cup of coffee, and it takes you as long to read as it does to drink a cup of coffee. And so this was really a big step for me, and I self-published it on Amazon. It was a step for me. And then after that, I published a workbook where I created this 90-day journal for people to kind of take your first step and take that little thing, having the mountain in mind. What's that next little thing you're going to do to get to that mountain? And so I created this journal, and I didn't even know that this was like something I could do. But again, I did this, and it kind of, to go along with the book, I'm hoping to help other people write their stories and write their workbooks, create what their message is, and share it with more people. That's a big dream of mine for sure, is to help other people get their stories out and take that next little step of writing and publishing that maybe you never thought. That's what I'm doing right now. How that all comes together, and will it bring me back to Africa? I hope so.
not sure that I'll be trying Kilimanjaro anytime soon. I think the highest that I've done is probably Mount Charleston, just outside of Las Vegas. And it always amazed me walking on that mountain just how unprepared people can be. Even in summer it does get chilly at just under 12,000 feet, and you'd see people in a t-shirt and flip-flops. Although I expect a lot of them turn back when the going gets tough or chilly, or both. And then you get the ones that are just setting out up the mountain late in the day, and you explain, in as strong a words as you can without being offensive, that there's no chance they're going to get to the top and back before darkness, and they just ignore you anyway. As Tiffany mentioned there, she does have a short book about the walk that you can buy on Amazon for around £5. It's called Couch to Kilimanjaro. The highest hill we have around here is the Merrick, although it is actually classified as a mountain, and it's 2,766 feet high, so just shy of a Munro. It's not quite as high as Kilimanjaro, that I will say. Maybe it would be a challenge to lug a couch up it, so that you could call it Couch to Merrick. Or maybe not. I do have some stories about the Merrick too. The first time that we ever climbed it, on the way back, a flatbed truck was barreling down the narrow dirt road near the car park. I thought that he was going to rescue a car. It was a really huge truck, way bigger than you'd need. You'd easily have got 3 cars on it. He actually stopped and got out and asked if he was on the right road to Cumnock, as the road was only just wide enough for him to get down, and it was getting narrower. He said the GPS had taken him down there. I said that it was a road to a car park so that you could climb the Merrick. It wasn't a through road for a truck. He looked absolutely mortified. He asked if there was anywhere ahead where he could turn, and there is a car park, but it was full of cars, so there's no way he'd been able to get in. So he decided he would reverse, and it is several miles of narrow and windy road. And as soon as he got back in the truck and hit reverse, he went straight into a ditch. At this point, he was pretty inconsolable, and there was no phone coverage, and he was now blocking the road, so no one could leave. Well, they could by foot, but that wouldn't be ideal if you wanted to go home and get there in less than 20 hours. He had lots of wood on the back of the truck, so a group of us tried to get that off and use it to get him out of there by wedging it near the wheel. Eventually, a guy with a small truck who was parked at the next car park went back to his vehicle, came back, and somehow managed to get him out of the ditch. But then, of course, there was the small issue of getting him out. So a few people walked behind the truck where he could see them, and they guided him back down the about 4 miles to where he could make a turn. So that was our good deed done for the day. Actually, I think that the good deed wasn't getting him out of there, but it was consoling him. He was a complete mess. But anyway, we managed to get him calm, and he probably arrived in Cumnock about 4 hours later than he wanted to. But there were still people in cars trying to get out who were clearly livid and couldn't hold in their anger. It was a bit like the noise in New York City at rush hour. Of course, I also have Merrick stories of people unprepared for that walk as well. It's never a good sign when you meet a couple in the car park with 4 kids, 2 of whom are in sandals. The wife is in dress shoes, and they have no backpack with water, and their first question is, how long is it going to take to get to the top? When you point out that they don't have any water, the first thing that they say is, why do we need water? Maybe they thought there was a McDonald's at the top. Anyway, that's enough of me rambling and going off on tangents, but then if you're a long-time listener, you know that I do that all the time. So that will just about do it for this week. If you do have news or suggestions for podcast guests, please do get in touch through jim@walkingpost.com. As always, I'm looking for guests, whether it's about a new trail, new equipment, new books, or someone who has done an amazing, unusual, or interesting walk. So I hope you enjoyed this week's walkingpost.com podcast, and I hope you have a great week, hopefully with a walk somewhere. Maybe to see those planets align, or, as is the case here, a nice cloud pattern. Until next time, happy trails! Walking Post from walkingpost.com is an Air Coastal Media Limited production.